we've seen what's on offer if you're prepared to buy property off the peg. But what if you want to go down the custom-built route? This is more unusual for the foreign buyer, but it's not impossible. This house is a one-off. Its owner is British-born Nigel Howarth. He and his wife Pat had the house built to their exact specifications and moved in 2004.
We just loved the place. We came here on holiday in the early 80s and basically fell in love with the place and made the decision shortly afterwards to retire here. We had a look at some houses that had already been built, some of the property developers were building, but we had very strong ideas and thoughts about what we wanted in our house, and so we commissioned a local architect to design and oversee its construction. We found the land very easily, we found our architect very easily. The main difficulty we had were getting our ideas across to the builder on certain features that we wanted in the house. There wasn't much paperwork to do. In fact, that was one of the tasks the architect took on our behalf, was getting all the planning permission, the building permits and everything else. It's considerably cheaper. My guess against a property development home, like for like, is 40 or 50% cheaper. The things we really didn't like about property development houses were the number of steps. Most of them seemed to be built on precipices. What we wanted for our old age, we wanted our house to be on the level. There were quite a few features that we had here that aren't on the purpose-built ones. For example, all our internal doors, we supplied those ourselves. And indeed, all of the other fixtures and fittings in the house that you see, we went out and bought ourselves. There are two reasons, really. A, we get better quality, and we also have a wider choice. So, for example, we've got a granite flooring here. Now, if you were to go to a property developer and say you wanted a granite floor, he'd probably be charging you £200 a square metre. Whereas in reality, the cost of a granite floor is about the same as a fitted carpet in the UK. In designing and building your own home, there is a lot of hard work. Choosing fixtures, fittings, finishes, liaising with the architect, liaising with the builders, and so on and so on. It is almost a full-time job.
Limassol is Cyprus's second largest town. Now, it's not as beautiful as Paphos, but it's still attracting its fair share of Brits. In fact, 20% of the British community live in the Limassol area. Many of them are no doubt attracted by the lower property prices. You can expect to pay, on average, 10 to 15% less for property here than in Paphos. It certainly doesn't have the high concentration of developers and estate agents that Paphos does. But there is development going on, particularly around Pyrgos and Paraklesia in the east, and Ipsonas to the west of Limassol. If you are going to buy around here, a 3-bedroom house will cost between 140,000 and 160,000 Cyprus pounds. But don't forget, you'll need to add around 20% to get the value in sterling. Limassol is a commercial port, so it doesn't exactly have the seaside charm of Paphos. What you will see, though, are Turkish influences around the bazaar area in the town centre. And Limassol is still a relatively small place by British standards. It's not much bigger than Oxford, in fact. So you can still feel like you're escaping the rat race. And because it's the commercial and industrial centre of the south coast, there are more job opportunities in Limassol. So the British community here is made up of retirees and working people.
Watch your step.
One obvious alternative to finding a job is to start your own business. Kim Koniotis and her husband Alex did exactly that when they moved from Hertfordshire to set up their restaurant and wedding business in Cyprus. So what made you think, right, enough, sunny Hertfordshire, I'm over with it?
Working in London mainly, stressful job, commuting, the usual thing. Just decided that we'd give it a go here.
And why Cyprus?
Well, Alex is part Cypriot, so that made it slightly easier to come and live here. I was a chef, so the obvious thing to do was to come and open a restaurant, so we had to get here and find a property, which we did within 6 weeks.
And Kim, how's it been for you personally settling in Cyprus?
It was very difficult at first. Setting up the restaurant was different because there's different rules and regulations to the UK. So at first it was difficult, but we've settled quite well now.
Anything that you don't quite like?
It's difficult with the sun 8 or 9 months of the year, coping with that and working in the heat. I think if you're going to come to a country that is this hot, you need to love it.
The other thing I've noticed, Kim, is that Cyprus is becoming increasingly more expensive.
Yeah, well, sadly, when we went into Europe, prices did rise. We're hoping that they're going to settle back down. We just have to wait and see, but it is becoming more expensive.
So if someone hasn't got any contacts, what advice would you give to them?
To come out here prior to coming to live and do a little bit of homework. I don't think it's necessarily that easy to get a job here. I'm running my own business, so it was different for me. But whatever you do, it's homework.
So if I were to ask you what you missed most about the UK?
Mainly I miss my friends. If I could just transport them all here, life would be perfect.
If you're interested in buying overseas property as an investment, Cyprus is looking like an increasingly good place to spend your money. I met British property investor Dominic Higgins, who's been taking a look around. Now, I know you're particularly keen on investing in Cyprus. Tell me why.
Well, I looked at various countries in the new Eastern Europe and the emerging economies, and particularly those 10 countries that signed up to the EU in May 2004. And Cyprus scores very highly on a number of points. It's 340 days a year, all year, sunshine. Malaga, for example, only gives you 320. The financial and legal systems are English-based. The Cypriot people are very welcoming to the British community.
What about the fact that Cyprus has recently joined the EU? Do you think that's affected property sales in any way?
Well, it's affected things in several ways. The EU is now investing money in the infrastructure in Cyprus, so it's going to improve the highways, the roads, the communications. It's going to be more attractive for people to live over here and to buy second homes over here. Secondly, you can now get mortgages in Cyprus pounds, which you could never do before Cyprus joined the EU. In the longer term, they want to join the euro, which means that their interest rate is going to have to converge down towards the Euroland interest rate. So just recently, the interest rates in Cyprus have come down. Again, that's making property more affordable, both to the local population, but also to people from Britain.
Now, I know you've been having a snoop around the island. Come on, give us some hot spots. Where should people be looking to invest their pretty pennies?
Oh, I don't know about if I should give away my little secrets, but if I had some money to spend, I'll be looking in several places. On the east side of Paphos is a couple of large golf developments and resort areas where maybe either on resorts themselves or for a little less pricey going around the outskirts of those developments, I think that could be a good place to invest for the longer term. You need to be looking at a 5 to 10 year term. I think the suburbs of Limassol, 15 minutes walk to the beach, to the seaside, is again another good little hotspot. And I also like Paralimni and Proteros on the east coast of Cyprus. I think, for, again, a medium-term bet of 5 years, I think you can't go wrong.
If moving into an area full of expats is not your thing, then my suggestion would be to leave behind the coastal areas that are a bit more touristy and look further afield inland. That way you're sure to get a flavour of the real Cyprus. Plus, it should be cheaper. One option is to head for the hills. The Troodos Mountains, which rise behind Limassol, cover much of the island and are dotted with small villages. You can expect to pay up to 25% less for property here than you would in Paphos. Platras is the main resort in the mountains, and housing developments are beginning to appear around it. But real romantics will want a stone cottage in a mountain village. Tracking down that dream village property isn't easy, and you'll find that most will require renovation. Expect to pay around 60,000 Cypriot pounds for a property and budget 30 to 40,000 to turn it into a habitable 2-bedroom house. Which means that for 100,000 Cypriot pounds, or around 120,000 pounds sterling, you've got a mountain hideaway. Not bad if you can find one. Start your search by contacting estate agents in Limassol, or simply take a trip to the mountains and ask the locals if there are houses for sale in their area. If you're determined to stay by the sea, Polis on the northwest coast is probably the least touristy of the island's resorts, although this is changing fast. Around 45 minutes drive from Paphos, Polis is beginning to appear in the glossy brochures of the local property developers. And the trend is set to continue as there are plans afoot to build a new road between Polis and Paphos. You should contact estate agents and property developers in Paphos or Polis for information on houses in the area. Since Cyprus joined the EU, British citizens who are resident on the island can buy as much property as they like. So if you've got the money, you can buy a house by the sea and a mountain villa. If you're not living in Cyprus, you'll need to get official approval to buy any property here. The whole process takes up to 9 months, but permission to buy is very rarely refused. Whether you want to live in Cyprus or invest in property here, now is a good time to buy, as some experts predict that prices could rise by as much as 50% when the island joins the Eurozone in 2007. So if you do want to make the move, here's some basic information to get you started.
I've been to Cyprus a number of times now, and the more I visit it, the more I really like it. It's a nice mix between the foreign and the familiar. Now, the cost of living is higher than in Spain, and long gone are the days when you can get dirt cheap accommodation. But if you look, there is still decent accommodation available at reasonable prices. And I'd say that the key is to do your research before you decide to relocate.